G'day boys and girls, welcome back to the 14th edition of The Wrap. You know we got another big one coming for you. To my left I have our special guest for the week, Armin Akrillian. That's how you pronounce it, correct?
Armin Akrillian or Alexis Bush.
Or Alexis Bush.
Alexis Bush.
On my right I have Andy Cameron, the familiar face. How are you, mate?
Not too bad, mate. Been a big Mother's Day today, so a big family outing, big drive back, but we're good. We're good today.
We did have a good day. Now, Alexis Bush, he's an interesting character. He's very politically involved. He's also got his own side hustles where he does four-wheel driving through the highlands of Victoria. Is that correct? Why don't you give us
Outback Victoria. Okay, all right.
Why don't you give us a rundown of what it is that goes on in your life?
I'm politically active during campaigns. Otherwise, I go into my little shell and I just rant on about your odd lefty who makes a comment here and there and what seems to be trending in the news with the lefties generally. Just like to trigger them, you know.
Right.
How I am. A bit provocative that way. But otherwise, I'm pretty tied up working for a pastoral company.
Yeah.
And on the side, and sort of it works quite well with my job, my full-time job, is I've got this social enterprise called Back to the Bush. It's all about raising awareness of Australian bush culture, the environment, you name it, you know, bringing the bush onto people's smartphones, TVs, tablets, whatever tickles your fancy, that, you know, wherever you want to watch your content. But I thought I've always had a passion for the bush. I grew up in the city. I mean, I don't have family that's gone into the bush and sort of been a, you know, Malcolm Douglas or a Russell Coit. But after Malcolm Douglas died, I looked at sort of looked at all the personalities that go into the bush and promote the bush, and I really couldn't see anyone that's going to replace Malcolm Douglas anytime soon. So I thought, you know what, I'll just start it now and see if I'm getting my old age of when just before Malcolm Douglas died. You know, if you know, I might end up like him, might get a troopy and go around Australia, and by that time I'd have a lot of experience under my belt because I started at such a young age. And yeah, it's just all about bringing awareness of the Australian bush, the environment. I do free tag-along tours, you name it. It's just a passion which fuels my fire.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to come back at the end of the podcast and really get stuck into Back to the Bush. But we've got a few big things lined up, and you've been on the campaign trail, and as we always like to do, we like to do a domestic story and an international story, but the loyal listeners of the podcast, the day ones, know that first off the bat, every week we do a jumping to conclusions. In honour of our wives and girlfriends, we say something that is not backed up by evidence or of any common knowledge, and we say it, and then whichever one we like the best, we like to discuss it at the end. So Armin, Andy and I are going to say something. You choose which one is more interesting, which we'll come back to towards the end of the podcast and explore it, okay? So Andy, have you got your jumping to conclusion for this week?
Look, last week mine was actually semi-prepared, which was a bit rare, but we've gone back to our old ways.
Of making up a below par one.
Making up a below par one. But mine is that everyone should participate in some form of art. In creating art.
Creating art?
Yeah.
Good for the soul, huh?
Good for the soul. Beautiful for the soul.
Okay, Jess McCartney over here.
I'm a were your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Okay. All the 13
my conclusion is that the NRL should have a trade window like the NBA, where teams can trade players in the middle of the season to spice it up. Now, Armin, I don't know which one interests you more to explore at the end. Do you have a preference?
Both do, but I'm going to have to make an executive decision.
You will. Do you want to make it now?
See, that is interesting. I don't follow the NRL religiously. I follow it enough where I'm able to make educated bets. That'll make my life a little bit hard, so I'd go for art.
Andy, okay, we're doing
because anyone can do art. You can piss in the snow, and that's art.
It is.
Right. Exactly right.
Andy is the Arts and Crafts Friday man.
Look, have horrible fine motor skills, so I can't paint, draw to save my life. But you know what? Let's give it a crack.
Okay, so first story is the domestic story, and we're going to do an interesting one, I guess, because usually on this podcast we kind of lean a little bit towards the right. We lean a bit libertarian, which we find more of a natural home in the Liberal Party than in the Labor Party. But today we're going to do a story which I think demonstrates some forward-thinking ability of the Labor Party, potentially.
Potentially.
We don't know if it's going to actually come to fruition. But Andy, why don't you introduce it? Because it's your story.
Well, on the campaign trail, a week out before the election, Labor has released its costings, showing a bigger budget surplus every year and culminating in a $21.7 billion surplus by 2022-23 as a result of the changes to the two-class tax system, which they've sort of coined. Personally, I haven't heard that before, but it's just saying that some people get off on loopholes and stuff like that, while like the everyday person just has a bit of a rougher go with taxes pretty much. And so Labor's promised the $21.7 billion surplus, which equates to 1% of our GDP 4 years earlier than the Coalition, which is something that you wouldn't really expect considering fiscally.
The Liberals have been branded as the fiscally more responsible party and have probably had a more responsible fiscal policy
track record,
at least since John Howard.
Yeah, but the costings do not include any future increase in the New Start unemployment benefit, even though Labor has flagged a review, and a proposal to lift that payment by $75 a week would cost the federal budget $3.3 billion a year. So that's something that has been omitted, but may be flagged for review later is pretty much the vibe we've gotten there from Labor. And it says Josh Frydenberg, who's a member of the Coalition, said that today's announcement... I'm not sure, the Treasurer. I wasn't sure whether it was him or Cormann.
He's the Deputy of the Liberals, right?
And that's
Treasurer.
That's right, and Treasurer.
Yeah. So today, he said today's announcement by the Labor Party leaves a big black hole and doesn't explain the negative economic impact that $387 billion of higher taxes will have on the economy. And another side note is that Labor's promise to restore the full growth in hospital funding would cost $33.7 billion over the decade.
Okay. Armin, initial reactions. Do you trust it?
No, definitely not.
When
was the last time Labor delivered a surplus?
Well, they've been, I think Swanee, our mate Swan, every year advertised a budget surplus, but didn't deliver any. Now, that being said, Swanee's not the treasurer.
It's Bowen.
It's the Bowmeister, the boa constrictor.
Bow and arrow.
What do you think? Do you think they'll be able to deliver a more responsible, or do you think they'll be able to pay off the debt in a better, more quick way or a better way than the Liberals?
Well, definitely my biased opinion, to be completely frank, is that Liberals will deliver a surplus next year as well, and they are, of course, more fiscally responsible as a government. The Liberals have set up the budget to essentially start pumping out surpluses, and it's a bit of a weird one, because if Labor gets in on a hung parliament, or let's just to say they get in with a one-seat majority even, the Senate looks like is going to be even more of a dog's breakfast. So a lot of these crazy things that Bill Shorten wanted to pass, they're not probably going to get knocked back in the Senate, which I think will be more conservatively aligned than it is now. And so as a result, next year they might be a surplus because they really haven't made any major changes. All the big stuff they want to pass might get knocked back, so they might.
Right. So even if Labor gets into government, they might accidentally get surpluses.
They might. It's accidentally. Well, yeah, I guess you will call it
and
accidentally.
And then the Liberals will be cheering potentially the Conservative voters out there.
Well, no, the Labor will be ribbon cutting that. Be like, oh, we delivered a surplus.
Yeah. But I'm sure there'd be some happy campers who say, well, whoever delivers us a surplus, we're kind of happy with that.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, as an Australian, you would be happy with a surplus no matter which government delivers it, but it's the policy behind it.
I think the point is that it's
Now,
if it's not like a purposeful surplus, then it's
now,
not really an
what I
achievement.
will say, what I think is interesting is, I don't know any of the details of this two-class tax system, right? I don't actually know what they're proposing or what the loopholes are, and I assume that even if I did read them, I wouldn't understand them because I don't that's how accountants make their money, right? Same way lawyers make their money. Is it the accounting system is so damn complicated and the accounting law books are that damn thick that the only people who know them are actually like the massive accounting firms or the massive lawyer firms, right? And so they're actually kind of invested in making the accounting process more complicated or the law process more complicated depending on where you are. So I'm a fan of trying to make things simpler for the average person and just make government stuff simpler in general, make things more easy to comply with, more understandable. Now, whether that will actually yield real benefits in this scenario, I don't understand. But what I do know is that there are probably a lot of high wealth or high value individuals, very wealthy individuals, who have accountants working full time to make them pay less tax, right? Now, my personal philosophy is that if they made the money, I would like them to be able to keep as much of the money as possible. But if we're operating in a system which has a bunch of loopholes in it, I think it's probably better that it's that the policy gets implemented as it should and we can work off that basis rather than a broken policy with heaps of loopholes. Does that make sense?
Trying to catch on, mate.
Andy, do you have any reaction to that?
Look, I'm sort of confused on what you just said, but
Well, let us know in the comments below if that rant made sense. I hope it did. But if it didn't, it's no use explaining it again. It'll take too long. And I don't want to waste our listeners' time. I just think transparency overall and simplicity and then compliance with a simple system is generally a good thing and something that you should work towards.
I think that's agreeable.
But I don't know that that principle is going to come to fruition or yield any real benefits.
And the problem is like with most of like budget costings or whatever, they come out in like the best case scenario. And so when we see that Labor here is going to get such a surplus so much quicker than anyone really expected, it's somewhat concerning in my eyes in that this is the best case scenario, but a lot of the time
you don't get a best case scenario.
You don't get the best case scenario.
You don't get a best case scenario,
but
definitely.
I mean, as someone who isn't actually voting, but will be in the next election, I'm hoping that if they do get elected, they deliver a...
Now, my understanding also is that Josh Frydenberg's budget is based on optimistic projections of global economic growth.
I'm sure on both sides they would be.
But onto maybe a slight tangent, but similar. In potential praise for Labor is they announced an intention to build a high-speed rail network. Now, Australia has, my understanding, has been talking about building a high-speed rail network, particularly from Melbourne to Sydney, for like 30 years, right? But nobody's actually ever done it. And to the best of my knowledge, the reason why we haven't done it is because of the lobbying power of Qantas, which would be crippled if it didn't have exclusive access to the Melbourne-Sydney flying route. Now, my natural reaction is always, well, if the business can't compete in like a fair way, and if we deliver benefits to the Australian people and there's a business that can't compete with that, well then it's kind of their own damn fault, because they're obviously not delivering goods or services which are valuable enough to Australians to keep them afloat, right? So I appreciate Labor. It's forward thinking, but it's forward thinking that should have happened 30 years ago, and every government since then should have taken it on, because China's leaving us in the dust, Japan's leaving us in the dust, and to not have a rail network that goes from Melbourne through Sydney through to Brisbane is insane, because not only would it mean that there's an alternative to flying, which is just good, and there's more competition there, but it would also mean that living in Sydney is actually a much higher quality experience, because you'll get all these people who realise they can actually get to Sydney CBD in 20 minutes from Wollongong or Newcastle, you'd get a massive economic upturn in those cities, and you'd actually get, I think, a much higher living standard in Sydney just through less traffic, lower housing prices. And I think kind of it's just a great benefit. And we've just got this one damn airline company which is standing in the way. Now, Armin, do you have any reactions to that?
I'm a big fan of high-speed rail. In fact, if you remember, well before the state election campaign was underway, the Berejiklian government made a commitment to actually seriously investigate high-speed rail options outside within a radius around Sydney. I think as far as Orange, as far south as Canberra, as far north as I think it was more north than Newcastle, but and it's great because that's going to mean, I think they had these rough projections. I said from Lithgow to Sydney, you're going to be you're going to be in Sydney in 25 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And imagine what it'll do to the property prices out there all along that corridor.
Yeah.
And businesses will flourish out in these regional centres.
And I think it'd be a great lifestyle as well. There's a lot of people who don't really like the city, but like they don't like the busyness and the congestion. They would love to have a bit more land, a bit more fresh air. They would love to live out there. The problem is they got a job that's in the CBD, right? But if you could switch that up, it could be a real game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's great. It would be great for like, even if it's just within New South Wales, even if it's not just like Melbourne to Brisbane, but out to these like regional centres. It'd be great there because even like accessibility wise, like you have people that have to come from out like well into the country in order to like have doctor's appointments, like go see specialists and stuff like that. Where if you're like you can either fly, which is like pretty inconvenient considering it's like small airports. And then if you can just get there in 25 minutes, and even an hour, it'd be amazing.
China's high-speed rail is actually really good and way more convenient a lot of times because it's like you get to the actual train station like 15 minutes before the train leaves. You quickly walk through the security thing, you go to your platform and you just get on, right? It's not like you have to go through this elaborate security thing. You have to check your bags in, you have to go through these customs and everything. I don't know if we'd have that same thing in Australia, but for a lot of people, even though a plane flight might only be like 1 hour and a high-speed train might be 3 hours, when you add up the travel time in between and the fact that the train stations are usually right in the middle of the city, it ends up being actually a fair bit quicker and a fair bit cheaper if you're going from Shanghai to one of the surrounding cities like Nanjing, Suzhou, or like Hangzhou or something. And that might well be the case. I don't think it'd be the case for Melbourne. It might be a bit longer, but what I'm saying is that it can actually be a much better way to travel than flying in terms of the overall experience.
Look, it's the same thing as people who fly from Sydney to Canberra.
Yeah.
I've on multiple occasions beat people to Sydney driving.
Right.
Yeah. That's the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, anything more? I just like the forward thinking.
Yeah.
Like you get a little pat on the back, Labor, for your forward thinking, and I appreciate that. I'd give you a hug if you actually went and did it. But just throwing it out there, you get a couple points. You get a couple playground points for that.
I think it's just tough luck for Qantas on this one.
Yeah, Alan Joyce can go suck eggs if he's stopping this.
So I think we need to move on onto this high-speed rail.
Okay, very cool. Now, our second story, an international story. We did a little bit on big tech censorship last week, but we couldn't help going back again. Because not only was, as we've covered previously, Tommy Robinson got totally banned from almost all platforms. You had Avi Yemeni get a bunch of his accounts blocked or suspended after he was stitched up by Jim Jeffries and Comedy Central.
Scumbag Jim Jeffries.
Scumbag Jim Jeffries. Now, there's been a whole lot more injustices in the social media banning world, but we have an interesting joining together of these two stories and our guest Armin. So Avi has been campaigning for Tommy Robinson for the EU elections, correct? He's been like overseas trying to help Tommy out. Is that right, Armin?
I'm not privy to exactly what he's helping him out with, but yeah, I believe he's helping Tommy out with stuff.
He's helping Tommy out with something, right? So Avi on his own Instagram even though Tommy's account is banned, right? Tommy's account is banned. Avi took a selfie with Tommy's face blurred out in it. So you can kind of tell it's Tommy, but it's not Tommy's face, it's blurred out. Now, Instagram then took that photo down for like violating its hateful policy guidelines or something, because it's designated Tommy as like a hateful figure, right? So you can't even post a photo with Tommy Robinson, who could be the most popular political figure in Britain. You can't post a photo with it. He's definitely more popular than Theresa May. You can't put a photo with him on Instagram, even with his damn face blurred out.
Well, are you sure he's more popular than Theresa May?
Well,
the media will say 5 people rocked up to his protest, remember?
Oh, my goodness. The protest for Tommy Robinson was probably like the most significant protest in Britain that we've seen in like a long time. There were tens and tens of thousands of people going, Tommy's so bad.
No one else heard about it except us, because we keep an eye on that stuff.
Yeah, or except probably everybody in London, if you were there, because it would have been that damn loud. But no, then they'll tell you about the media will cover is the Sleeping Giants protest of Sky News with like 8 people outside it.
And they'll cover the Lakers protest outside the Staples Centre, which looked
that had like
appalling.
8 people as well. But we appreciate Avi's effort. We give a quick shout out to Avi because we've been covering a fair bit of Avi's content on our Instagram. We actually got the follow from Avi recently, which was really nice. We gave ourselves a little pat on the back there.
We're getting some traction. Clout has increased.
Our clout increased 10 points.
I had to force him to follow my page.
Did you?
I go, can you press follow? It's like,
press it. Now, we've never really engaged with Avi privately, but we do have the benefit of having someone on the podcast who has. Now, Armin is a big fan of Avi, says Avi is the same off-screen as he is on-screen. Why don't you give us what you think Avi's main contributions are to like political debate? What do you think his main points are? Maybe in a little watered-down version so as not to put yourself in any trouble.
I don't care if I get into trouble.
And what do you think he's like off-screen? And how does it reflect?
Avi is a larrikin through and through. Real proud Australian, real proud Jew, and that emanates from him both on and off screen. He's really passionate individual. Look, what you see is what you get with Avi on screen and off screen. He's just the exact same larrikin. Of course, you can have a little bit more in-depth conversation with him in person. And you, I guess it depends on how well you know Avi, then you'll, just like with any other person, you'll learn a lot of their secrets and personal things. And Avi, I think, is very down to earth, and he the word down to earth is used a lot lately. By the way, it's just like, it's a good way of describing someone, but I genuinely mean it. He's really down to earth, really genuine, and he really does want the best for Australia in his view. I do see eye to eye with him on a lot of things, and a couple of things I don't, which is the beauty of human nature and free speech and everything. You can agree and disagree, and in the perfect world, as libertarians would like, you'd want free and honest and violent free debate. But unfortunately, anyone who's got a different mind to the establishment and the left establishment and all that, and which Avi unfortunately gets himself into.
Well, let's do a quick recap of how we actually... Now, Avi did have a pretty substantial online presence before we started covering his stories. We didn't engage with him before. I wasn't following him, didn't really know much about him. The story that brought our attention to Avi and probably really skyrocketed Avi's popularity was when he was flown out to do an interview with Jim Jeffries. Now, Jim Jeffries is actually he's Australian, but he lives in Hollywood and does the Jim Jeffries show for Comedy Central, right? Now, he flew Avi out and did an interview with him. I think it would have been like about 5 months ago. It would have been about 5 months ago from today, 4 or 5 months ago. But regardless, it was like 2 or 3 months before the Christchurch attack, right? Now, one of Avi's main points is questioning Islamic immigration. Is that fair?
Correct. Yeah.
He's questioning Islamic immigration, right? So Avi says there are significant problems not with Muslims but within Islam. which naturally lead to problems in society where the most kind of full believing Muslims who are fully subscribed to the Quran make it incompatible with some Australian cultural norms and institutions, right? Would you say that's fair?
Western, yeah.
Right. So things like freedom of speech, things like respect for like women, things like this that we might take for granted. He feels like Islam is incompatible with. Now, he then did that interview, and it was an interview that went for I think over an hour long, right? And what ended up happening was Jim Jeffries, the sneaky dog, in the final product, which he aired on his kind of like late night talk show, where he shows himself as this awesome, moral, righter than thou guy, is that he took Avi's answers from some questions and edited them as if he was answering different questions, right? And so what it did was it made Avi look like a racist or an Islamophobe, or it made Avi look really terrible in a way that didn't reflect the reality of the interview at all. Now, the good thing and the smart thing that Avi did was he secretly recorded the whole interview after getting advice from Tommy Robinson, who'd been totally stitched up, which you can see in the hashtag Panodrama documentary. Look that up, because that'll blow your mind about the BBC that the British paying for, and we covered that a little bit. But so anyway, he filmed it, and he filmed the whole thing and exposed Jim Jeffries, and then he put that video online. He then got invited on like InfoWars, Louder with Crowder, Reuben Report. He did like a big media tour. We were covering it as well. Carnage House, obviously the most influential media platform that gave him coverage. And so he's been doing that. But what happened was after that, after he exposed Jeffries, Comedy Central, my understanding, went to the social media platforms, Instagram among others, and said, please take Avi's account down. So I think his Facebook got banned. My understanding is his Facebook got banned. I think his Instagram's still up and his YouTube's still up. But he's had some of his social media stuff taken down. Jim Jeffries hasn't issued a public statement, even though everybody in his comment section is asking for it. And it's a bit of the deep state in big tech.
Yeah, and one of the things I took away from that sort of interview, the one that Avi recorded, was that Jim Jeffries was saying some like actually really Islamophobic things.
He was
some
saying
horrific.
Not just in the interview. Not just that in that interview. If you saw the video that Avi posted, he actually took cuts out of all of his stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
All like this guy's got a history of, and he's if he ever came out and made a statement, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm a comedian. I'm allowed to joke about these things." But please, God, the comments about women, comments about Muslims, comments about homosexuals. This guy is a disgusting, spiteful, hateful human being who masks that with comedy. You know, we know what he's thinking, but he uses his veil of comedy to be able to get away with all the crap that he's been saying.
And he says in the interview as well, "I always look good in my interviews." So he knows how to...
Jim Jeffries has, I think, received the famous Jussie Smollett Beta Male of the Week award from Carnage House Productions several times. I think we just give him another nomination this week. Yeah. Anyway, is there anything else we want to add to the story? Because I really do want to talk about you on the campaign trail. I want to hear what real politics, grassroots level campaigning on the ground is really like. Is there anything else you want to add to this Avi Yemeni or big tech censorship story before we move on?
Oh, I could open up a can of worms. Let's leave it for another night, I think.
Okay, I'm very happy to do that. Now, you've been on the campaign trail, bouncing between Melbourne and Sydney and maybe a few other places, you'll let us know. But you've dropped a few hints to me, like, there's a few dirty tactics on the ground that kind of the average voter like us wouldn't really kind of see or be engaged with.
Or the media won't cover.
The media won't cover. So tell us a bit about what you've been doing and how the campaigning experience on the ground is really like.
Well, I can't say that I'm a seasoned campaigner. I campaign just more out of passion. That passion is to give our local members, you know, who I'm campaigning for the party, the best possible chance. You know, my own little trickle piece of help, you know, combined with everyone else's hard work, to really lift that primary vote up in each respective electorate. So obviously we've had the New South Wales election. The New South Wales election was a feral campaign, obviously, from the left. You had the likes of, obviously, Labor with their ways. You had Keep Sydney Open. You had all the druggo, pinged up idiots posting degrading and disgusting things about the Premier online. And, you know, I've been asked to go and bury my own, start digging my own grave over my dead body. You know, all these disgusting, despicable comments were thrown at me in the New South Wales election when I was handing out how to vote cards for. The worst place was, of course, at Town Hall pre-poll, where you had all the greenies. And yeah, it was feral. But, you know, paid off. All our hard work paid off, and I only did a very small part of campaigning for the local electorates that I participated in, and a whole heap of other people copped more abuse than me and put more of their blood and sweat into it. And we, you know, the volunteers of the campaign, they don't get heard. You know, they you know, it's the politicians, you know. Let's move on to the federal one, right? Tony Abbott's had feces in a book put in front of his, you know, office. He's had his core flutes defaced, he's ripped down, vandalised, you know, you name it. You know, Jason Falinsky, he's just had his core flutes defaced and ripped down. Anti-Semitic ones as well, you know, Josh Frydenberg. Warren Mundine, the Aboriginal Liberal candidate.
Yeah, we quite like Warren.
You know, he's been labelled as a racist.
He doesn't have enough privilege points.
And he's had his core flutes defaced.
What's a core flute? I don't even know what a
core flute is. You know, the plastic real estate posters. You know,
so the poster you put up on plastic, on the telegraph lines or in your front yard.
You know, in the front yards and everywhere else. Yeah, Julian Lisa has had his campaign material, you know, defaced. You know, with anti-Semitic. You know, I'm not even going to describe what it is because it's despicable. And you know, this is, you know, obviously the Prime Minister, the egging, you know, attempted lunatic lefty who shared Green's social media posts on her Facebook. You know, the Greenie tried to throw an egg.
Did she?
She's getting charged.
Well, good, because there was that bloke in obviously Egg Boy. He got off. And I have mixed feelings about that, but I feel like you don't really get a free pass for throwing eggs at politicians. But the person who threw, I think, an egg at Jeremy Corbyn in Britain recently, I think they copped like 28 days jail or something like that.
He got charged, and no, I mean, if Bill Shorten copped the egg,
imagine if Julia Gillard copped the egg.
She did.
Julia Gillard. Well, I mean, if we go back to Julia Gillard, you had people out the front of Parliament House, right? They were part of the Abbott mob, I guess, if you want to call them that, the anti-carbon tax people. And Abbott famously got up and had a speech in front of him, and then he got labelled as a sexist, I can't pronounce the word. Misogynist. You know, all of that, because a couple of people had ditched the witch up, you know?
Yeah.
But you look at what's been made about the Premier, her in brothels, on Pornhub, her face on, you know, some disgusting things, that did not receive any condemnation because it's a conservative politician. It's a liberal politician.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, all of that, right, you've had all these, you know, reasonably public, the media has reported on all these racist and unacceptable damage to election material by the loony left. But the volunteers, you know, you don't hear their stories, and people have attempted to attack me while I've been out. I've heard of fellow volunteers being attacked by lefties and Labor campaigners on the campaign trail.
Now, do you think there's any attacks or defamation on like Labor materials or Labor volunteers?
I have not seen anything. I have not seen any Greens. Actually, I drove past a corner of the construction zone and I saw, they're putting up those Greens vote for climate posters. That was probably the only left campaign material in this entire time that I've seen defaced. And you know how it was defaced? Someone's just gone and walked past and just ripped through the middle of it. That's honestly, I have not seen anything else. Yeah. I've had my core flutes that I've been putting up around Benelong. Whoever's putting up the Labor core flutes, they've come and actually put their core flutes straight on top of ours. I've seen them being ripped down. Right. It's feral,
It is a bit of a dirty game, politics and on the ground campaigns. So what's the so who have you been campaigning for?
I've been campaigning in Benelong federally, and
is that John Alexander?
John Alexander, former tennis player, and he's a great guy, and I just flew down this weekend just to give Goldstein a hand. Tim Wilson is another great guy. Really respect both of them, and I really, really, really hope that they'll do quite well in this election. And
what do you think the realistic? Where do you see the Liberal Party's chances at this point? Or what can you say? How does the Liberal Party feel about their own chances?
Look, it could end up being like one of those Trump moments, right? The polls say we're going to lose, which they do at the moment.
Yeah.
They're coming in, aren't they?
It's slowly going up. Even if Labor gets in, it's going to be a hung parliament. Look, we're all trying to be positive in the Liberal Party, and we're definitely, safe seats, with safe seats with high margins. I do not see any evidence of any complacency from the local members currently there and their campaign team. Everyone's being quite, positive. Let's just say positive, and we are being opportunistic as well, but not complacent. I have a feeling. I don't know. I have a feeling that the Liberal Party will win, but on a hung parliament, that's my.
I'm just kind of disappointed in the Liberal Party in the sense that you're down in the polls against Bill Shorten. Like, what series of events has led to this catastrophe? Take a good hard look in the mirror. I'm looking at ScoMo and Malcolm, and throw Tony Abbott in there, Julie Bishop, Barnaby.
Dutton gets in there as well.
Dutton's in there as well, I guess. It's just like, take a good hard look at yourselves. Look at the person who's beating you, and what type of reflection is that on yourselves?
The Australian people are obviously fed up of, the merry-go-round of leaders, and Australian people want stability, and they haven't seen it from both governments.
Well, this is what I think is there's kind of a beacon of hope in Johnny Ruddock and the democratisation of the Liberal Party campaign, which would hopefully, my understanding is hopefully by the end of the process, if it goes as they would like it, mean that in a similar way that the American parties have a primary vote for their leader, we would have a primary vote for the leader of the Liberal Party. And I think that in
this case, would win hands down.
Yeah, and that would actually mean that I think everyone would be a lot happier with that. Because nobody really knows about the factions in detail, but we know they're there, and we know that
there are no factions in the Liberal Party.
Allegedly, yes, I know. Yes. Andy, anything to say to that?
Look, not really. I think it is. I do think it's going to be closer than what people expect. I think that if it goes one way or another, it'll be very close.
All right, I found my point because I lost it, and that's why I threw it to Andy. But I
know it was a hospital pass.
It was an absolute hospital pass to Andy.
Ribs got crunched in that tackle.
No, but I think if we had a primary in a similar way that Republicans have a primary when they chose like Donald Trump, and the Democrats have a primary, for example. Well, they didn't actually choose really Hillary Clinton. That was the party itself choosing Clinton, not the people. But I think everybody would be a lot happier, and the leaders' policies would actually reflect a lot more the policies that the people want to see, because you'd have a lot more campaigning for people's interest than for the interests of the factional bosses. Now, I'm not going to force you to comment on that, Armin, because you might be in some sort of position. But I'm a big fan of Johnny Ruddock and what he's doing.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think it's an interesting suggestion. I don't entirely disagree with it. I think local members are very important as well. And each local member's got their own set of sort of policies and targets and objectives that they want to be able to achieve for their local area. And then there's obviously the broader policy, which is the party policy. And I think we kind of see that now. It is becoming more, of course, identity, mainly from the left, but it's a very identity sort of politics driven with the way they are. And they're showcasing Bill Shorten's face, driving through Melbourne, I just got sick and tired of seeing his face up on massive billboards everywhere. But I think we're already having that. I think the Australian public know, this is my opinion, but I think the Australian public know that if they want Bill Shorten to be elected, they're going to vote for the Labor candidate. And if they want ScoMo to be elected, they're going to vote for the Liberal candidate. And look, I don't have an opinion on it, but I'd value the significance and importance of having each area having its own local MP and each local MP championing what's important to their local area as well.
Okay.
And fighting for them. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, I think we can bring it back. We're almost going to do the 360. We're going to bring it back once with the jumping to conclusions, and we're going to bring it back again with Back to the Bush. Unless you have something extra to say.
I was thinking there is the most famous segment of the show.
Beta male of the week.
It's what Alex gets in hot water with his significant
he gets
other.
Cooked by his girlfriend. Shout out to Ellie if you're listening for this segment. We do, and so we do every week. We do a beta male of the week segment. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You've noticed. Well, that's good to hear. Armin's a faithful listener. So I'm going to throw in, if you have any nominations for beta male of the week,
but what
free.
What does a beta male do?
Well, a beta male is somebody or an institution, or it could even be a more expansive thing, because we think that male can be gender inclusive and also institutionally inclusive. So we've previously given it to the big tech companies.
It's pretty much just a male is now just a noun.
Anything.
It's just a noun.
It could be a noun, but we don't want to be verb discriminatory either. So it could be even an adjective if you're so inclined. So I'm going to throw my beta male of the week this week to Instagram for taking down the blurred out face of Tommy Robinson in what is a not so much surprising but shocking, just a shocking policy decision, shocking philosophical decision, and shocking moral decision.
Well, Jim Jeffries, as we've said before,
he's a classic. He always gets one.
I think Qantas also gets
Qantas nomination. Definitely gets one. Do you have any, Armin, that you'd like to nominate? Could be even from the campaign trail.
Oh, look, it's just going to have to be Bill Shorten for me.
Big Bill. Okay. Bill can get one.
The guy can't get his figures straight. He doesn't know his own policy.
Well, look, if I'm deadly honest, I only watched one debate, and that was the one that Scott got a bit too uncomfortably close with Bill on, and I thought Bill performed better in the debate than Scott did. But I'm happy to leave the chips
He's
where
a
they fall.
unionist. He's convincing. You should see his appearance on Q&A. He was getting grilled by some audience members, and my unbiased opinion is that he pulled it off really well, even though he was getting grilled and he couldn't answer the question properly, but he made it sound as if he addressed the problem.
Right.
Like, he's a clown and he's a magician at the same time.
He definitely presented himself a little bit better than Scott did, and Scott made a pretty bad mistake, in my opinion, of trying to invade Bill's personal space on the stage. But no, I'm happy for you to nominate Billy Boy for a beta male of the week.
I think Instagram takes the prize.
I was going to give it to Qantas. I vote for Andy votes for Instagram. Who Now you might, if you vote for Bill, we're going to be in a
sticky
triple threat
situation.
Instagram.
Okay, Instagram gets it. So, beta male of the week goes to Instagram, and maybe on the flip side, alpha male of the week goes to Avi and Tommy. Are we happy with that?
Very happy with it. We can make a phone call to him.
Okay, well, that'd be great.
After this and let him know.
We'll let him know. I'm sure he'll be jumping for joy when he realises he got alpha male of the week.
I'm sure in the big conservative libertarian political circles, they're thinking, I love the beta males of the week, but why don't we get any damn attention with the alpha males?
Yeah, need some alpha male attention. Maybe we'll bring that in because maybe we need to spread some more
good
positive vibes
good vibes
in the world.
only.
Some positive energy. Okay, so first wrapping up the loose ends is we're coming back to Andy's jumping to conclusion. Why don't you? Well, I'll rephrase it. Why everybody should participate in some form of arts.
Yep. So firstly, art isn't necessarily painting or drawing. I think it's also poetry, podcasting even. I think it's more just being able to express one's thoughts
and emotions,
which we're all about here. A big wholesome love on CHB.
Love your homies.
I think a lot of times when people get into have emotional issues, it comes as a result of bottling up of emotions. I think when you see people just get agitated, and you can see the build up, and you can see something's going to come eventually. And I think that if you're able to express yourself, even to yourself, it's not something where you have to show others. It's something where you can just get your thoughts out on a page, just see your own emotions out somewhere as a way of sort of, I know expressing yourself comes out in quite a soy manner when it's been sort of stigmatized like that, but it is, I think it can actually be quite helpful, especially for people who do go through serious issues where their emotions are hard to come out, especially males. I think we're discussing it today, how in Western countries we have high suicide rates, higher than what it should be. And so I think if we're able to express our own issues and express our own emotions through art, I think that'd be helpful and beneficial for everyone.
Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's pretty good. I like the expressive bit. Channel some of that emotion into the art. Get it out there.
Yeah. I think a couple of famous artists, if we're going to talk about art as in drawing and that kind of stuff, a couple of famous artists have used art to vent their frustration and feelings, etc. And I think if you're motivated, if you, for example, are depressed or have suicidal thoughts and stuff, and art is a way of motivating you to let your feelings out without actually having to go and open up to someone, which you're probably not comfortable with doing, then that's a way of that's a saving grace, really. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely true. Okay, beautiful. Now, finally, and this is something I'm quite interested in, actually, even personally, because I don't know that much about it, but I see some cool posts. I see you in some awesome places with some awesome scenery, out in the outback, some snowy days, some hot days, but you get yourself out almost, it looks like, in the middle of nowhere, where there's kind of no one for a long way, and it's kind of you in a four-wheel drive. And why don't you run us through, you kind of gave us the social enterprise aspect, why don't you tell us what you actually do?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the Russell Coit at the moment, because my mates that come out with me, they always get videos of me chopping wood, and I miss the wood, and I'll go around somewhere and be full confident that I'm going to get up a hill or through a bog, and I'll go into it and I'll get stuck or in some weird position, and you'll hear the All Aussie Adventures, time to hit the road. So I'm a bit of I take it seriously, but I would like to swear on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do these. I'll fuck up, but it's a serious fuck up. It's not a parody fuck up like Russell Coit, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of why I want to go out and take people with me, is because part of them sort of taking the piss out of me really drives me to get out there with some boys and have some fun, even though instinctively and naturally, and inherently, I'm doing everything in a serious capacity. But I know at some stage I'm going to fuck up, and there's going to be someone there to do the all Aussie adventures moment. So I love that. But the passion, I think, my passion is about taking people out to all the real special places that I hold dear to my heart, and know a lot about. I'm really fascinated about the local history. I'm a conservationist. I'm really big on environment, and the significance of every special sort of environment, micro environment. The high country is
what is that? What is high country?
The high country is the Alps, the Australian Alps. So anywhere really above 1,300 meters above sea level. It's a very special, very unique place in Australia. The ecology, the history of the high country is something that I cannot, I'll never ever be able to. I'll go to my grave still not knowing everything about the high country. It is so special and so unique compared to all the other high countries around the rest of the world. And I want people to go out there and see it. I don't want lunatics going out there and see it. I want people to come with me, and I want to take them through this region and tell them what's significant about this 1 metre of track that we're going on, or what's significant about this tree. Some of the oldest trees in Australia grow in the high country, the snow gums. They grow in really crazy, volatile weather up there. And, you got one that I always go and visit. It's a very special one. If you watch Game of Thrones, I call it the old god of the high country.
Right.
You honestly, seriously, I am a bit spiritual person. Personally, I would actually literally go and touch the tree, which is about 700 years old. This tree's seen Aboriginal elders holding meetings under its leaves, under its branches. It's seen the pioneers come through and the first explorers. It's seen, it's had the drovers up there with the cattle, the farmers, and now it's seeing all the bushwalkers and four-wheel drivers up in the high country. It's a real historical marker, just like all the other historical marker. The huts as well. I'm a volunteer in the Kosciuszko Huts Association, and this hut, this association is essentially protecting and they're renovating huts that need work on them. And they preserve these historical markers of the high country. When in the 60s national parks came in and they started bulldozing these huts because they weren't part of a natural environment. So this association was formed in the 60s sort of as a rogue sort of thing, it's to go in there and then actually protect the huts and rebuild these huts that national parks was knocking down. And now it's a formally recognised association that goes out and protects and rebuilds huts and maintains huts. And again, it's it complements what I do, and it's not just the high country, it's the outback as well, it's the bush, it's really anywhere in Australia that no one knows about and no one gets access to. I get access to, and I know about it, and I want to take people with me to actually explore it and see it as well. A very special place.
Is there any requirements for the people you take? Like
they've got to pass the personality test with me. I've got to be able to trust them, because a lot of the places we access are through private property, and I have a relationship with some of the private property owners, not some of them, all of them, and I've got good rapport with them. They respect me, and I respect them even more, and they trust me that anyone that I bring through there, shares the same values as me, respecting private property, respecting the environment, respecting the history.
So if one of the listeners likes the idea of going four-wheel driving through the high country, is there a chance they could go on one of these trips?
Definitely. I get people messaging me all the time. I can't take everyone out, and I can normally tell a bad egg very quickly as well. But I'm pretty straight up.
Awesome. Now, how do people find out more about Back to the Bush, and how can people find you? What's the links? The plug section. We'll put it in the description as well. Yeah. But where's the best place to?
The Facebook page Back to the Bush, or the Instagram back2 the bush.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. We'll throw all those links in the description down below. If you like our content, feel free to subscribe. We're trying to grow our YouTube a little bit more. Also, feel free to check us out on Facebook and iTunes. And if you especially like the stuff, this is for the real
OGs.
rich super supporters who want to send us into the stratosphere of political commentary. Feel free to support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That really helps us out. I hope you enjoy. We spent some of our support money on these new microphones, and I hope you guys can tell the audio difference. So we're making these investments slowly but surely. We also got that camcorder, which is over there, which we've had the close up on the guests for, and we're going to have that going forward in the future. So we're trying to develop our game as much as we can, and we're going to take you guys along for the ride with us. I'm happy to leave it there. Anything else from you guys before we say goodbye?
Thank you for your invitation to appear on the podcast.
Mate, no problem. We'd love to have you back.
Definitely, there's a lot of things to discuss.
Oh, one more thing. This is the most important thing.
The most important one.
One of the most important things.
Okay.
Is that if you're still around, I should have really advertised at the start, but
we can probably just plug it at the start.
We could plug it at the start, and we could just plug this bit in at the start.
I'll be putting it there.
Yeah. Okay. Great. The plan is for this weekend on the election day to do a live stream in the afternoon/evening of the election. So we'll be calling the election as the seats come in, as the ballots are counted up. We'll give you the rundown, what's the important things going on, what do you need to look out for, what each party's proposing. But it will be pretty relaxed. We might be even, we've had some suggestions to take a shot for every seat that Clive Palmer wins, among other drinking games, which could be fun. But it'll be relaxed. So if you like Carnage House political commentary, feel free to have us on in the background. So we'll be probably live streaming on YouTube and Facebook and maybe Instagram as well. So throw us on in the back at a prees before you go out, or just check in every now and then to see how drunk we are and how the election's going is the second most important thing. Feel free to do that. But anyway, more information on that coming. Can't wait to bring it to you. Bye-bye. See you next week.